Wonderful. Well, it's 1:15 and let's get started. We are delighted to be here to kick off the Aurora Institute's 2022 Symposium with this panel of amazing leaders. My name is Susie Bell, and I serve the Mastery Transcript Consortium's network of schools as the Senior Director of Member Engagement. Prior to that, I served learners and their families in the Windsor Locks, Connecticut School District for 17 years as an educator, school leader, and district leader. The Mastery Transcript Consortium, or MTC, is a global nonprofit membership organization centered around shifting the way learners learn, teachers teach, and how schools credential learning. We exist because of the desire of schools like the ones joining us today, who have begun the process of reimagining and redesigning how learners experience education. Our network of almost 400 schools across the US and around the world draw inspiration and guidance from each other to advance their own unique journeys to mastery learning. Innovative schools, and many of those are likely being showcased throughout the Aurora Symposium over the next couple of days, are stepping up to make needed change because they've discovered design elements and opportunities for learners to engage them deeply, authentically, and joyfully in learning. Schools are adopting graduate profiles representing both academic and durable skills and providing every learner a unique and personalized approach to developing those skills. Yet these innovative changes these innovative schools actually face a challenge when that learning must be whittled down to a single number, such as a GPA, that fails to present the full story of a learner's journey. These schools need flexible learning records designed to highlight and capture the unique profiles of learners and how they've advanced along their own journey to mastery learning. So we're equally excited to share with you two schools' journeys to mastery learning through the creation of their graduate profiles. During this session, we'll be focusing on supporting you in achieving these learning targets. I can describe the different ways that schools have approached integrating their graduate profile competencies within their learning model. I can develop plans for supporting learners in progressing towards mastery of our graduate profile competencies, and I can incorporate learner voice in the design and development of our school's plan for bringing the graduate profile to life. I'm delighted now to introduce our two panelists today. First, from Northern Cass School District in Hunter, North Dakota, is Tom Klapp, who serves as the Director of Personalized Learning. And next, from Pomfret School in Pomfret, Connecticut, Gwyneth Connell, who serves as the Director of the Grower Institute. Cory Steiner, unfortunately, the superintendent of Northern Cass School District, is unable to be with us today as he is in transit. I'll have each panelist share a little bit more about themselves as they answer our first question. If you could please describe for our attendees the process your school or district has undertaken together with learners to build, share, and integrate your school's graduate or learner profile. All right, let's get it kicked off with Northern Cass.
Yeah, so as Susie said, my name is Tom Klapp. I've been here at Northern Cass, which is a really small rural school out in the middle of North Dakota, like literally in the middle of a cornfield. We are a public institution. We have PK-12 all in one building, about 700 kids in our building. So kind of a unique setting. We consider it a pretty small school, but we serve all age groups all under this one roof. So it's kind of a cool setting at the same time. We started our journey with our portrait. We call it a portrait of a learner. A lot of people call it portrait of a graduate. We decided to call it a portrait of a learner because it doesn't just apply to our kids that are graduating. It should start all the way down in the time that they're 5 years old. And we continue grow those things. So when they do graduate, they have a really well-developed skill set. But it started probably 6-7 years ago. And it was a group of educators first that put the initial draft together. And we said, well, wait a second, this is us just telling kids what they need to know. So then we brought kids to the table and said, what do you guys think about this? And it went through a couple of revisions. A lot of our Competencies, our portrait of a learner actually comes from kids, our learners telling us, here's the skills that we think are important, and skills that we're going to need in life. So right from the very beginning, we had kids at the table. You can see on the screen there, we call it a call to greatness. We use a little bit of North Dakota's language. The state has adapted some competency work and portrait of a graduate work. So our big overarching themes are called attributes. Ours are accountability, communication, adaptability, leadership, and a learner's mindset. And then under each one of those, we have a set of competencies that go with them. And so it's been a steady revision process over the course of 5 or 6 years. We are now currently, last year we did a revision process where we're writing scales for each one. So scales like a 1, 2, 3, 4 scale to help kids, help our staff better. I hate the word assess, but more measure where they're at and track their progress towards growth and eventual mastery on those. So I hope that kind of answers the basic question. And maybe I'll turn it over to Gwyneth at this point and she can talk about hers.
Sure. My name's Gwyneth Connell. I'm the director of the Grauer Institute at Pomfret School, which is one of those fun job titles that really tells you nothing. I think at another school, I might be called the Dean of Curriculum and Instruction or the Dean of Teaching and Learning. Pomfret is a small traditional New England boarding school with ivy-colored brick buildings and beautiful fall foliage right now. We serve 365 kids in grades 9 through 12 with a handful of postgraduates. So, I mean, for many of you, it's a weird school. Our kids live here with us. I have dorm duty on Wednesday night and I hang out up in the girls' dorm with the sophomores from 8 until midnight. I'm overseeing their study hall, making sure they're working on their homework. And then I show up to school the next morning and help guide their teachers in implementing research-informed practices in our classrooms. Something that's always been sort of a hallmark of independent schools is this notion of teacher autonomy. Teachers really like to do things their own way. And we are really guided by our mission statement. We don't have state standards to adhere to. We don't have government bodies telling us how to run our school. And so, but we got to have something, right? We got to have some kind of North Star. And for us, that takes the form of our mission. So I came to Pomfret in 2019, and it's sort of become a joke among our senior admin team that in my very first board meeting as a senior administrator at Pomfret, I broke the mission. My head of school had said, like, oh, it would be a really good introduction for you to the board to really lead them through a deep dive into our mission. Every year the board has to reaffirm the mission. So why don't you make them really like look at it and think about it? Well, and it turned out they hated it. And so over the next couple of years, we undertook this process of revising our school's mission statement, vision statement. And then finally, the portrait of the graduate was sort of the last piece that we felt was sort of a foundational document that needed to be revised as part of this. So when we brought the old portrait of the graduate in front of our faculty, it was so funny because it was sort of the same thing as had happened with the board 2 years earlier. They were like, who wrote this thing? This isn't what we do. This isn't what we're trying to accomplish. There was a lot in there that was about, oh gosh, it was a lot about preparing kids for college, which is true, but we also try to think beyond college placement and college attendance to the life they're actually going to live beyond their formal schooling. There was a lot in there about being creative, but like for the marketplace. It read like a consultant wrote it. And luckily nobody around here was willing to take credit for having actually written it. So we were able to really blow it up and engage in a really sort of rapid design process. I think the faculty meeting where we decided we hated our portrait of the graduate was the day we returned from Thanksgiving break in November. And then we got about 28 pages of feedback from that meeting. And then I sort of boiled it down, took it to our senior administrative team, and we sort of created this set of adjectives and nouns. And then I went to our academic leadership team, which is composed of our department chairs and other academic leaders in the school. And we took this set of adjectives and nouns that our senior administrative team had generated and did sort of a snowball exercise where I put people in teams and they sort of paired, they were like a curious learner, an inclusive friend, and, just, it was Mad Libs really. And so they came up with these descriptors that they wanted. And then of course, because my academic leadership team can never follow the rules of the exercise, they decided halfway through the activity, what we're talking about is adjectives and nouns that describe a portrait. But what we really like, learning is active. We want adverbs and verbs that are almost like a video of the graduate. And of course, I'm like, okay, I actually love that idea, but we have 15 minutes to finish this exercise. So can you just please do it my way for a hot second? And then I promise we'll take that into consideration as we generate this final draft. And so there at the bottom of the slide, you can see, because also I had another board meeting coming up a week and a half after that initial faculty meeting, where we had to bring this to the board to get whatever we had sort of approved or approved with edits. And so I was sort of running around from group to group, bringing drafts around. But by the end of 2 weeks, we had a completely overhauled portrait of the graduate, which you see at the bottom of this slide here. And it really laid the groundwork for us to then begin thinking about the competencies that we wanted our students to pursue in order to kind of prove it. Lots of schools have these portraits of the graduate hanging on their walls, decking out their websites. But we really wanted to identify what it is that we're asking kids to do that serves as evidence that these are the characteristics of our Pomfret graduates. So that's where we are now.
If I could maybe add on a few things, hopefully you guys will see some similarities and also differences, right? Like there's two different schools here. We're a public school. We do have standards and we have state requirements that we have to meet. Where Gwyneth, their school maybe doesn't have those things. So this is a really interesting contrast. But she talked about their mission, and 5 or 6 years ago, we sat down and said, like, we don't live our mission. Like what every school has one, but how many schools actually like pay attention to the thing? So we actually don't have a mission statement. We sat there and we looked at it from the state or the standpoint of like, why are we here? And we have a why statement. We believe every kid can change the world, and therefore we're going to provide a world-class education. And when we talk about changing the world, that doesn't mean they're going to go create the cure for cancer necessarily, right? But what small changes does every kid make on a day-to-day basis that can change their world or the world of people around them? And then a world-class education, like, let's define that. What does that mean? And that's obviously different for every single kid. So we said, like, a cookie cutter version of school isn't going to work for us to achieve that why. So we live this why every single day, and our portrait of a learner is just a reflection of that. And I would also mimic what Gwyneth was talking about, of like these verbs and adverbs become important. The language you put in there are really important. How do they live that, right? If it's an action that a learner can actually do, and they can show evidence of, then we can talk about growth and give feedback. But if it's not a tangible thing, or it's really difficult. So that language is important, and it took us a long time to get that language pretty solidified.
Yeah.
That's great. And Tom, thank you so much for identifying. There are two uniquely situated schools here and experiences. And so for our attendees who are joining us right now, we'd love to have you engage with us a little bit, and please respond to the following. First of all, just summarize, like, what did you hear in the two explanations? What were the real salient points about that graduate profile and how it was developed? And where do you see some similarities and differences in these two unique contexts, moving to a personalized competency-based learning model? So we'll ask you to please just log your thoughts in the chat. It would be wonderful just to see, you know, what everyone's thoughts are. I think being able to revise, yes, definitely. It is a process. It's definitely a process. Love it. Yes, being a learner profile. Yeah, when they're kindergartners, they're not graduating yet. But that learner profile certainly, like, you know, is on the way to being a graduate for sure. For sure. Yeah, please feel free to keep those comments coming. Engaging many stakeholders' viewpoints, yep, getting to the heart of who we are and what we truly live out in practice, for sure. Because as Gwyneth said, one of the things that's challenging is you spend time writing these really important statements, and if you don't live them, it really becomes like, well, what's the purpose? Why did we spend all that time? Why did we actually move in that direction? So yeah, feel free to keep jotting in the chat. We'll lift those up as we go through. Also, if you have any questions along the way, we'd love to hear them. And so feel free to pose them in the chat as well. All right. So verifying mastery. This sounds like very technical and complicated, but really it's the idea of, as you've built your profile of the graduate, or your graduate profile, or your vision of the graduate portrait, all of those terms are interchangeable. Just talk to us about what processes or systems you've developed for how to verify learner mastery for each competency. And if you haven't developed those, like, what's the process by which you're sort of starting to envision what that looks like? How do faculty work with one another, or within certain departments, groups, advisories, et cetera, like you name it, you know, wherever it lands, to verify that mastery? And what role, if any, do learners have in that verification process? I think that's important to lift up as well. So I'll hand it back over to you. And I think we're going to Pomfret.
All right. So for us, I mean, as we develop our mastery learning record, if we are only translating into like weird, unfamiliar competency categories, the same exact information that has existed on a legacy transcript for decades, we are not doing it. It's a fool's errand. We shouldn't bother doing it if we're just doing the same old, same old. And so it's been really important to us. And I think the real value add that we see in a mastery-based learning record is being able to include not only the learning that happens in our classrooms, but I mean, we've been selling boarding school for 128 years at Pomfret on the learning that happens everywhere, that our playing fields and our theaters and our dormitories are all places of learning where, you know, thoughtful adults are guiding students to acquire skills and knowledge that they didn't have when they walked in the door. So it's been really important as we've developed these competencies that the evidence of learning is coming from across our school. And the 24-hour experience that it embodies. But it's also true that as we started to develop these competencies, all the faculty were asking, you know, who clicks the button? Like, at the end of the day, who decides if the kid gets the competency or not? And lots of questions about, you know, what we've all seen kids who sort of chug along freshman and sophomore year, and school isn't hard yet. So they look on the surface like time management, they're crushing it, balanced approach to their schoolwork, they're doing great, so there was a lot of concern about what if we go ahead and grant a competency to a kid when what's really going on is we haven't seen them come up against a challenge yet. So I mean, what I've shown you here, the learns with curiosity and integrity, is probably our most academic, element of the portrait of the graduate. But even there, it's this question of, okay, if we're going to give them credit for oral fluency, how many times and at what levels do we need to see this oral fluency with subject area content? And so that's where we're thinking that evidence of learning is probably going to be a portfolio of, maybe it's video evidence from 5 different courses across at least 3 different departments where they have demonstrated their ability to present information fluently and in an informed way in oral formats. And so with these portfolio-based ones, that's going to be something where in my own US history class, I might say, this oral presentation you did, that would be a great addition to your portfolio. I'm not the one deciding if she gets the oral fluency credit, but I'm saying, yeah, as a teacher, I approve this as a portfolio element. This is a strong piece of work that reflects mastery of this particular skill. Check, now you've got one of them, 4 more to go. And it may be other teachers in other departments in other years who approve the other elements. And then we have to sort of build in that infrastructure of someone in the academic office saying, oh yeah, like most kids, it's junior year when they hit that, 5th thing in the portfolio. So let's go through and check them off. Who's got 5? And similar with course-based standards. So especially at the foundational level, we realized a lot of that foundational academic competency is going to come from the things that they're doing in class. And so we realized that a shift to standards-based grading was going to be a prerequisite for us to really be able to report what kids know and are able to do and what elements they haven't quite mastered yet. And then departments need to figure out what are the necessary ones that are really going to be part of those foundational competencies, and which ones do we consider to be kind of icing on the cake. If a kid is really amazing, they'll master this element of this discipline, but maybe not all of our kids will. With some of them, I mean, here we see this adaptive learning one which was really us talking about, we want to be able to acknowledge a student who has the metacognitive ability to figure out how they're going to learn something best. And that might not be a course-based standard. That might not be a series of assessments that they can submit and say, ta-da, because that's really a process-oriented competency. And so that might be something where the student goes to their advisor. And we have advisory groups of about 6 kids. So we get to know them really, really well. And if my advisee comes to me and says, you know what, I think I'm ready to demonstrate my competency, my advanced competency in adaptive learning, that might be as simple as taking the form of a conversation where the kid raises the examples of 3 times over the course of their time at Pomfret when they have had to adapt to their learning strategy to achieve a particular goal. And they'll talk me through the process. And so there's a lot of controversy about like, well, are those ones okay? Are the ones where just kids say they can do a thing? Is that real? And so I think that's a little bit of the paradigm shift that we're going to have to, it's unlearning that adults have to do and relearning of this idea. Because if we say, oh, well, you have to write a report to show your adaptive learning, well, what if the kid's a bad writer, but really good at adaptive learning? We have to tease out the actual particular thing that we say we're assessing. And it's not really fair to make them use a different skill that they may or may not have to demonstrate the skill that they definitely do have. So these are sort of like, these are these moments where it feels like, oh, well, if we can just get our head around, yeah, the kid told me they can do it. And so that's how I know they can do it, because they told me and they gave me a couple examples of how they know they can do it. And maybe that's enough. What would happen? Oh my gosh, if the kid was in charge of describing their own learning, that would be wild. And then there are these sort of external things. I mean, if a student has an article published, like, you know, if they have original research published in an academic journal, that I love the external and quantitative ones because they're super easy for us. It's like, oh, kid got an article published. Check, they get the published scholarship one. It's not my job to decide if the article is good. It's not my job to decide if the research is good. It was good enough for the journal of whatever, so it's good enough for me, and we can check off those advanced competencies. And it's also true that then once you have those advanced competencies in place, all of a sudden our teachers are saying, huh, it never occurred to me that my kids might publish research in a journal. I ought to be looking for opportunities for them to generate research that they could submit to a journal. What a cool idea. And so I'm really appreciating how these ideas that we're having for the advanced competencies will then sort of backflow into our program and help teachers map out pathways for kids to attain these advanced credits, some of which right now might feel really pie in the sky for our school, but are actually totally attainable if we just tell both teachers and students, hey, this is a thing we think you might be able to do. So as with so many things, where I started from was this idea of, you know, oh my God, everybody's assessing things in a million different ways. But then when I zoomed out 3 clicks, it was like, oh, actually there's 4. There are 4 ways to approve these. And that feels much more manageable.
Great. Thanks, Gwyneth.
Yeah, that was fantastic, Gwyneth. Hopefully you'll hear a few similarities in what Pomfret's doing and what Northern Cass is doing. I would also say we're maybe not quite as far along in some respects. I did love the academic journal part of that. We also have kids that are doing some academic journal stuff, but definitely not a whole system like that. That's amazing. So we have a capstone similar to like portfolio of learning. We also have an LMS. I'm not here to sell people an LMS. I'll just tell you we have one that does allow us to link different evidences, or I guess a learner would actually link them to different standards and also different portraits of the learner skills, competencies. So we can kind of build this body of evidence for a kid and allow them to build their own body of evidence. And I would say like 100%, we don't want to just reduce a kid's time with us to a single momentary number value that we send off to a school, right? Or a future business employer, whatever. So we want to really take the time to tell the kid's story. And we want that story to be able to be told through that learning record and whatever they choose to send on to a college or prospective employer. So that capstone for us is the thing that takes place in their senior year. We do it by committee. So there's a committee of people that sit down and we review that. And it's really that final moment in time where a kid can say and defend that they have the skills, they have those competencies, although they're growing throughout the course of their time here. And I think this is where we realize we need something like Mastery Transcript to help us out. Like, how do we record that journey to that final moment in time? The role of the teacher, the role of the people in this building, like they're part of that committee. And I 100% agree. Most people initially like balk at this. And I think it's actually a trust issue. We have to trust each other that although I might not be an English trained by trade, like I'm not an English teacher, that doesn't mean I can't evaluate a kid and provide feedback on some of those more Englishy competencies. And so I have to trust myself, but I also have to trust that the person down the hall is also doing that really, really well. So we've taken our staff through like norming processes where we bring evidence to like professional development, and we all sit down and we talk about it and we norm the process to make sure that we're all talking the same language and we're providing similar-ish feedback to kids and that we're all on the same page. So we do some of that norming process and we continue to do that periodically just to make sure that we're all still okay. People that are doing this in their advisor, like again, we have an advisor system, so everybody has their advisees that they talk to. And if they have any issues with like what they're doing, they can bring it to their PLC team, they can bring it to a larger committee and like talk about it. So we have those. State standards, again, pretty traditional looking by course. And those are obviously educator reported, but when we talk portrait of a learner, a lot of it comes through the defense of learning. So our kids are constantly going through a defense of learning. So at the end of whatever unit of study that they're doing, there's usually some sort of final share out where they get into this defensive learning, and they're not defending the content, they're defending the skills, right? The competencies that they learned in that. And I think Gwyneth said it well, like kids are just talking. How do we like give them credit for that? Well, they're not just talking, they're being very metacognitive. They're being very, very articulate about their thinking process and what they learned about themselves as a learner and their ability to learn. So when we start to really acknowledge them for that and go like, that's actually the higher skill here. It's not that the fact that they can graph an exponential equation, right? It's the fact that they can think mathematically and reason mathematically, and they can talk about that. That's actually pretty powerful. So we really think about this growth and feedback as the process. And then we have different stepping stones. Again, we're a K-12 building. So at the end of grade 3, at the end of grade 5, at the end of grade 8, they have bigger defenses of learning that they go through. And then obviously at their senior year, they have a big defense of learning. But we've definitely come and hit that point in time where like we need something like a mastery transcript or mastery learning record to help us keep track of those moments in time and allow a kid, right, the voice for the kid to come in and say like, here's the piece of evidence that I want to show for this. And they build that body of evidence very clearly. And then that moment in time when they have that body of evidence pretty well thought out, then they can sit down and say like, here's how I've shown this and give it to me. I know Gwyneth talked about like 5 pieces of evidence. Typically we're on the boat of at least 3. So there's a similarity there, 3 at each level. So somebody asked in the comment, I saw it, our LMS is Empower, just for people who wanted to know.
Yeah, and Gwyneth, your LMS at Pomfret?
We just transitioned to Canvas, where we're using their outcomes and learning mastery gradebook in some of our freshman classes with a view to expanding it's the transition that's hard. There are LMSs, I think, that serve competency-based systems really well and LMSs that serve traditional grading really well. Canvas was the only one we could find that seemed able to sustain us through a transition.
Mm-hmm.
We were promised that it would be seamless. It has not been seamless.
Yeah, there's nothing seamless about it.
No.
And so to Gwyneth's point, we used Empower, and when we switched, like Empower doesn't do traditional grading at all. And we just kind of ripped the Band-Aid off and said like, we're going in, and we got beat up for about a year with it. But once we had the first group of kids, you know, apply for scholarships, get scholarships, once we had the first group of kids go to college and everything is fine, all of that kind of went away. And we did a lot of work on the communication part of that. So you can make it through, but there's going to be hiccups with everything for sure.
Yeah.
There was another.
Yeah, go ahead. No,
just on the LMS front, Canvas sold us really hard on a product they have called Mastery Connect, which if you are a Canvas school and they are trying to sell you Mastery Connect, my advice would be to just scratch really hard at that surface to see if it meets your needs. Because as an independent school, because they've baked in a lot of state standards, they've baked in a lot, like a whole assessment bank. But as a school that writes our own standards and designs our own assessments, it was not a useful tool, and it cost us a lot of time trying to make fetch happen with Mastery Connect. So, I think it's probably a great tool for certain kinds of schools. It was not for us.
No, it's a great. There were a couple more questions. The first one is definitely connected. What is the agency or school structure that supports the portrait of the graduate / mission? what performance metrics are used at that level and for staff in accomplishing the objectives, and how are adults held accountable for accomplishment of the competencies or objectives?
That's a great question.
Yeah, it's a loaded one. You
Yeah.
want to tackle it first, Gwyneth?
Sure. So our mission is Pomfret School empowers students to pursue lives of purpose and meaning. So I love it as a mission because I do think it helps us make decisions. And it's the Board of Trustees that really owns the mission, and has said, like, this is why Pomfret School exists, is to empower students to pursue lives of purpose and meaning. You can see that that's a tough one to get metrics on. Like, we could go around and ask all our alumni after 20 years, like, so how purposeful and meaningful has your life been? And how much did Pomfret empower you? If your life is purposeful and meaningful, how big a role did we play in that? I think that is probably destined to be just garbage science, even if we decided to do it. But I think that, and so this is where I feel like I talk a lot about at our school about radical alignment, just like it's Matryoshka dolls, it's turtles all the way down. It's like, if your mission and your vision are lined up with our portrait of the graduate, I think the portrait really does kind of tease out the elements that are likely to lead to a student pursuing a life of purpose and meaning. And so then it's these competencies that we're aligning with the elements of the portrait of the graduate that I like. This is the part, I think this is where the rubber meets the road, is if you can, it's drawing that straight line between, yes, I want you to try to learn how to, solve an inverse function in your pre-calculus class, but like, there's a straight line through some competency that has to do with navigating challenges strategically or learning with curiosity and integrity, that goes all the way up to the mission and plays a role in this empowerment that we talk about in our mission. So it's sort of taking the abstract and making it concrete.
I'm going to tackle this question a little bit differently. I'm not sure if this is what you're intending to ask, but hopefully it does. In the state of North Dakota has done a lot of work at the legislative level. So when you talk like agencies of support, I think that's one of our big ones. We're a choice ready state, meaning when kids graduate, we want them to be prepared for whatever it is their choice, right? Whether that's college, whether that's going into the workforce, whether that's military, whatever their choice is, we want them to be prepared for that. And so at the legislative level, they've passed a few bills that allow schools to be very innovative and think about learning differently, right? Is it just a set of classes that we want kids to take and they end up with a grade at the end? Or do we want to show that whole story? And so we've even have a bill that allows us to go through a competency based framework for a kid and graduate based on that competency based framework. So we are very supported at that legislative level, at the state level, and doing that work with us. So I don't know if that kind of answers your question or not on that, but we're definitely supported there. And then in our development of our portrait of a learner, we did a lot of research, and we also went to like community business partners, and we went into higher ed partners, and we said, like, what skills do kids need to be successful in your system? And they gave us like a laundry list of things, and weirdly enough, they're pretty much all the same, right? So we took all of that information, we sat down with kids, we sat down with our stakeholders and said, like, let's put this into an easily readable format. So we're supported at that legislative level for sure. And then we had a lot of stakeholders involved.
I think relative to that metrics conversation, the question that was raised, what, and this could be where we ask people to sort of noodle on this a little bit, but in terms of the capstone, in terms of and again, just talking about the flexible records that, your LMS doesn't necessarily have a a transcript or a learning record that allows you to do that. So what does the, you're members of MTC and you're able to use the records that we have available. Talk about how those might shift that metric focus, right? It's not that you're moving away necessarily from grading on the courses and standards essentially, but for the competency-based approach, how do those metrics get captured? That's another part of that question that I just wanted to highlight.
Yeah. You want to give me time to process that one if you want to tackle it, Gwyneth?
Yeah, we can even go move ahead and you can think about it for a few and then we can go to the next. And why don't we just give folks, yeah, that's a great idea. Let's give folks an opportunity in the chat to just think about systems that already, based on what's been shared, think about systems that already exist in your own school for integrating a graduate profile into your school's learning and teaching goals. And if you can't think of that right now, what opportunities did you hear from the presenters that where you may be able to envision and implement at your school? And in what ways can learners lead that verification process? You had some examples, kind of built in there, and in what ways can you envision other opportunities for that? So again, go ahead and log it in the chat so people can see your thinking and we can kind of cross-pollinate all of those great ideas as we move forward. And we'll head, I know time is ticking away. We wish we had so much time, but we're gonna head to our last segment here about successes and challenges. And this might be where you want to integrate that component around how you're capturing that school-wide learning. But in terms of successes and challenges, we always have, you've already articulated a few of them in your conversations, but what aspects of implementing the profile of the graduate have been relatively smooth, and which aspects have been challenging? And then what tools and system-wide support do you use to address those challenges to make the work more manageable for learners and educators? And that will also speak to one of the questions in the chat around the role of the teacher in backwards mapping opportunities for students to practice and ultimately demonstrate those competencies. A lot loaded into those questions. Take it away.
There we go. I wasn't sure if you had me queued up first or Cham. It's funny. I was looking at you sort of previewed these questions for us, and I'm so in it right now that I was like, oh, has anything been smooth? And so I had to sort of take a deep breath and remember how proud of myself I was this time, 10 months ago when we had just finished revising the Portrait of the Graduate. Because I do think that revision was a process that went like shockingly smoothly. It was, what in a school happens in 2 weeks? Nothing, like nothing. And so it was such a powerful reminder to me that just like, oh yeah, not everything needs to take a year. Even if it's school, it doesn't have to take a year. You can just do it and then be done. But I think what made that process so gratifying and satisfying and swift was that we were taking language and changing it to more accurately reflect what we do. But now, or what we think we do, because what we're doing now, and I think what's more challenging and more gnarly and more interesting and all of the things, is we have to take our actions and our behavior and change those to mirror the language that we've chosen for ourselves. So like we chose the language based on what we're doing when we are our best selves on our best day, but we want that language to actually describe what's happening most of the time on an ordinary day. And so that is the gnarly part, I think, and that's the challenging part. So our school is, 100% of our students are preparing for and applying for admission to highly selective colleges and universities. So that investment that families are making, and they're making an investment in the Pomfret experience, but it's also embedded in this very real pressure for kids to get into the college of their choice. And so we had a lot of, even as people are on board with the idea of shifting to competency-based, they loved the idea of the mastery transcript, when it felt like, yeah, we're just gonna get rid of a legacy transcript and replace it with this other transcript, and we're pretty sure it's gonna be fine. That was not the level of reassurance that our families needed, that our college counseling office needed, and by extension, our admissions office, who are trying to sell parents on this experience with that college list and with the confidence of our college counseling office. So it was like everybody was on board with what was going to happen during the 4 years, but it was, are we going to be able to fill beds? Are kids going to want to come here? And are we going to be able to place our kids? And so the introduction of the mastery learning record as a transitional step was a huge smoother over. I mean, I think Susie was one of the first people I called after I had a conversation with our admissions team last year, where they were like, we have a few questions. And I went to this meeting and it felt like I was punched in the face for an hour and a half. It was just like, they had really serious worries about whether kids were going to want to come to Pomfret if they were being assessed in a way that was unfamiliar to their families. So, so that decision to transition with the mastery learning record instead of the transcript and sort of alongside our legacy transcript has really smoothed over a lot of those issues. And I think the, being able to pivot to accommodate new information was, being able, like, we had some time to try and incorporate new information into our plans. I will say that rolling out Canvas this fall was hard. We chose it because of that ability to record student progress in both a standards-based and a traditional grade book simultaneously. But I think what we didn't anticipate, so our full faculty read Joe Feldman's book, Grading for Equity, over the summer. And while we had all agreed, okay, our 4 core freshman courses are going to be our pilots for standards-based grading, we did not anticipate how many teachers were going to want to dip their toe or their ankle or their whole bodies into those standards-based grading methods at other levels and in other classes. And they weren't all as ready as they thought they were. So they would be in the pool and then be like, wait, this pool is cold. What do I do about this? How do I fix this? And I think the student experience at the beginning of the year, in some cases, was like, I have 6 classes and I have 6 different grading systems. And kids were talking a lot about the new grading system, which wasn't a system. The only systematic thing we'd done was introduce standards-based grading for the freshmen, but the extent to which other teachers were test driving other little experiments that were inspired by Feldman's book. I mean, this just in, teachers in independent schools have had widely ranging grading policies for a really long time. That always happens. But because we were actually introducing a new system in one part of the school, it made people feel like, wait, this is a conscious decision that you made to have my 6 different teachers all grade me in different ways. And that was confusing for everybody. So, and we're still emerging from that little, from that confusion of the beginning of the year. So I think it's better now than it was. We've been able to have people sort of pull back a little and sort of, it's like I've had to really reaffirm over and over again, it's more important for us to do this well than to do it quickly. And it's hard because I think teachers found Feldman's book really persuasive, and it's hard for them to keep doing the thing they know probably isn't in kids' best interest, but they still need to learn how to do something better. And they're really hard on themselves, and they think they should automatically know how to do it, and they don't. So, so providing that training in a way that teachers are able to take on when they are teaching all day, then going to coach JV soccer practice, and then heading to the dorm to supervise study hall from 8 until 11. You know, our teachers are real busy, and it's hard for them to find the time to take on these new expectations. So it's hard, but it's there's enough it's interesting to me that the teachers who have been here the longest are the ones who are like, hey, Gwyneth, relax. Like change is hard. It's always hard at the beginning. There's going to be this period where it feels like chaos, and then we're going to be fine. And I think at a lot of schools, it's the reverse. It's the newer teachers who are really hungry for innovation. And then there's that stereotype of the 30-year teacher with the yellowed notes who never wants to change anything. It's the opposite for us here. I think people who have been at Pomfret a long time have been through some pretty monumental changes. So, and so it means a lot to me to have their support and to know that they can see the vision, the long-term vision, even if it's not quite brought to life yet.
Yeah, I'll try to add some other thoughts in here, and I'll also try to answer a few of the questions I've been seeing pop up in chat. I'll try to tie them in a little bit. I saw one question in there about, my kid won't get into college if they don't have a GPA, and we definitely fought that battle for a while. So one of the things that actually went pretty smoothly for us was our superintendent and myself. We went on what we called the road show, and we went to as many colleges in our area that we could, because most of our kids in again, public school go to a general set of schools that are pretty close by. We obviously have some that go much further away, but we went around and we just sat down with their admissions and said, like, here's our transcript, here's what we're thinking, what do you think? And they're all like, yeah, this is fine, we don't really care, we accept transcripts from all over the world, why wouldn't we accept one from 30 miles away? And so we actually got letters of support from those universities that we could put on our website and share with stakeholders, like, here's what the universities say, mommy and dad, we're not going to hurt your kid by sending them a different transcript. In fact, we actually had most schools that actually liked that mastery transcript of the mastery learning record, because it tells a different story about a kid. It's not just, again, reducing it to a GPA number. It has a story to tell, and they can place those kids more appropriately and find a path for them that fits. Probably the schools that we had the most problem with are the auto enroll schools, where auto enroll is kids just put in their numbers and then they're automatically either accepted into the school or they're not. They don't actually go through a transcript review. And so we still had to think of like the GPA for them. So we do have a system that converts it to a GPA for the kids and the scholarships that need those. And that's where I think Susie was putting it in chat, that the mastery learning record allows a school to have that option where it's not solely just a mastery based transcript. You can have the learning record and then also a more legacy look to it as well. So you can put some of those other tools on there or metrics that you need. For us, I would say that one of the things that was like super easy was this collective understanding of staff and stakeholders of, here's our portrait of a learner and here's why we think it's important. So the understanding was easy, but collective efficacy of how people actually roll it out and live it was much more challenging. And I saw in chat somebody talked about like that jump from standards to competencies. It's not an easy one, and that's why the title of this, I put content is still king. We still have a lot of people that think, that graphing an exponential function, right, is more important than critical thinking, or they don't know how to like marry the two. And so how do you do it well is where a lot of people still struggle. I'm a science-y person, right? That's my background. And I go, well, everybody does science experiments, right? Like, how do we get kids to think that science experiment is really a lesson in critical thinking? It's not so much about the content, it's more about the skill set that we're gaining. And so you don't have to think about this as like, I need to create explicit lessons to teach time management skills. No, you just have to let kids reflect on their time management and their ability to manage their time. And if they need some tools to help them manage their time while they do these things, like that's how we do it. So a lot of our people see it as like another thing that they have to do, where the people that are really excelling at it understand that it's like, it's all just embedded, right? Content is the vehicle that kids drive in order to get these bigger skill sets. And we need to make them aware and allow them to have voice and where they drive that car, if that's a good analogy for you. Again, we do have that tool, systems, and management. Our school vision really does play a part in this. And then we also do like some school-wide goals where our people, we do it collectively as a group. So all our staff, we have a school-wide goal right now of like tracking learner progress on the competencies. So we want to be able to go into any room in the building and see what kids are working on in terms of those portrait of a learner skills alongside of their content. So we want to see that progress and that tracking and the feedback that they're giving to kids. It's not about assessment. It's not about like giving them a grade for it, right? It's about feedback and growth. And so collectively we're doing this every month. We do professional learning based on that. We do some showcasing thing where educators share with each other what's going well, and we celebrate those things. So that's one of those systems that we have in place that really helps us collectively get a better efficacy as we move forward for doing these things. But definitely people still struggle with like standards and then competencies and those skill sets. Like, how do you marry the two, for sure?
Yeah, and you are not alone. That's a big challenge because, right, it's like seeing the forest for the trees, right? To understand that everything in the standards really is a building block up to those competencies. And it's hard sometimes to let go of those core standards, that they're not necessarily what we need to look at as the holistic view of what the learner has actually achieved in terms of mastery. So, and Stephanie, just, yeah, the finding resources to help create look-fors for those schools. Yeah, that's tough because you really do need to thread the needle from the standards up to those competencies. So I know we're getting to our time. We have about 3 minutes left. So in 30 seconds or less, I'm going to ask the final question here, which is, and you've been asking your questions along the way, and we thank you so much. I also will put up a screen where you can ask more questions. But closing and final thoughts, what's one piece of advice you would provide to our attendees on how to get started, continue, or bring to life their profile of the graduate profile?
I would include your kids. It's their story to tell. And so including them at the table, getting them, to articulate what they think is important. Without them at the table, right, it's just another thing that we're doing to them. And school shouldn't happen to a kid. They should be a part of that. School should be something that they get to engage with. And this is just it's a good starting point where you get their voice, and then they have a lot more ownership and a lot more invested interest in it.
Yeah, and I would say, I think having a cohort of like-minded people from other schools has been really invaluable to me. MTC has provided a little affinity group of boarding school mastery focused people. We have a Zoom once a month. And so having that group of people beyond my own school helps me pull outward a little bit and sort of see the bigger picture on a regular basis and not just get stuck down in the weeds. So I think find your team.
That's great. Well, thank you so much, everyone. We're really excited that you were here to hear these two amazing journeys that are still, in process, right? There's still work to be done. There's still great opportunities ahead for all the learners that you serve. If you want any more information from Gwyneth or from Tom, if you're willing, Tom and Gwyneth, you can feel free to plug your emails in the chat. for folks. My email is there as well as the website for MTC if you'd like to learn more about the information and supports we have available. But I can't thank Tom and Gwyneth enough for their willingness to share with you today. And we hope that what we've provided today gives you some inspiration as well as a realistic understanding of like this is hard work. It's not easy, it's not cookie cutter. It really is based on context and based on vision and purpose, and you two have done an amazing job sharing that with our attendees today, so thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone.